Mr. President, in order to place the bill on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, I would object to further proceeding.
The objection is heard. The bill will be placed on the calendar.
Mr. President, I'm glad to be able to say that 8 Democrats joined Republicans last night to take the first step to reopen the government. And in the very near future, we will be voting on a final package, a clean continuing resolution until January the 30th, and 3 bipartisan full-year appropriations bills. These bills are the military construction, VA, agriculture, and legislative branch appropriations, 3 of the 12 bills that Congress needs to pass on an annual basis. And what that means, Mr. President, is that year-long funding for SNAP, for WIC, for veterans, for essential farm programs, and for a number of other critical priorities will be met. Mr. President, I said that we will be voting on the final package in the very near future, and I'm hoping that will be hours and not days. We're on the 41st day of this shutdown. Nutrition benefits are in jeopardy. Air travel is an extremely precarious situation. Our staffs and many, many other government workers have been working for nearly 6 weeks without pay. I could spend an hour talking about all the problems we've seen, which have snowballed the longer this shutdown has gone on. But all of us, Democrat and Republican, who voted for last night's bill are well aware of the facts. And I'm grateful that the end is in sight. But I would encourage every member of this body, Democrat or Republican, pro-bill or anti-bill, not to stand in the way of our being able to deliver the coming relief quickly. The American people have suffered for long enough. Let's not pointlessly drag this bill out. Let's get it done, get it over to the House so that we can get this government open. Mr. President, as I have emphasized since being elected Majority Leader last November, I remain deeply committed to advancing full-year appropriations bills through regular order. And we've drafted this continuing resolution to extend to January 30th specifically to give us more time to get this bipartisan work done. I look forward to taking up additional appropriations bills on the floor in the near future. Mr. President, after 41 days, I'm grateful to be able to say that we are close to getting the government reopened. And again, I ask all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, of both parties, to make it possible for us to quickly pass this bill. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
So, Mr. President, the last 41 days have exposed the depths of Donald Trump's cruelty. He shut the government down longer than any president in American history, took innocent kids, veterans, federal workers as hostages, political hostages, all because he refuses to do anything to fix the health care crisis, and instead keeps pushing policies that will cut people's coverage even more. Look no further than Donald Trump's war on SNAP. Last night, the First Circuit reaffirmed what lower courts have already said. Donald Trump cannot take 42 million hungry people as hostages. He cannot withhold the benefits they need for food for their families. Even now, Donald Trump isn't satisfied. Today, even more cruel, he appealed to the Supreme Court yet again to try and get out of paying full SNAP benefits. The president's done a lot of cruel, nasty, mean things over the years. But going all the way up to the Supreme Court, not once but twice, to ensure kids go hungry is about as cruel a thing as he's ever done. Donald Trump would rather make hungry Americans suffer, make kids suffer, make veterans go hungry and disabled individuals suffer, than do anything to lower health care costs for the American people. The American people will not forget Donald Trump's cruelty and heartlessness over the last 6 weeks. And let me say something else. The American people have now awoken to Trump's health care crisis. Health care is once again at the forefront of people's minds. People now see that premiums are about to skyrocket. They're terrified about how they're going to pay for their insurance. Democrats demanded that we find a way to fix this crisis, and quickly, but Republicans have refused to move an inch. So I cannot support the Republican bill that's on the floor because it fails to do anything of substance to fix America's health care crisis. The health care crisis is causing millions of families back home sleepless nights because they don't know how they're going to afford health care insurance so much needed by their families. Doing nothing is unacceptable, but that's the choice the Republican side made in obeisance to Donald Trump. Republicans now own this health care crisis. They knew it was coming. We wanted to fix it. Republicans said no, and now it's on them. When people's out-of-pocket costs double or triple, very soon Americans will know Republicans made it happen. When 60-year-old couples start paying $20,000 a year for health insurance, they'll know Republicans made it happen. When 4 million Americans lose insurance, when kids with cancer are priced out of coverage, when families face financial ruin, they'll know Republicans made it happen. And the pain will only get worse as more and more people on ACA and with private insurance see their premiums go up and up and up. People out there are struggling. It's harder to make ends meet. Rent is up, groceries are up, people's electricity bills have gone up, and now, thanks to Republicans, health care costs will spike dramatically. The past few weeks have exposed with shocking clarity how warped Republican priorities truly are. While people's health care costs have gone up, Republicans have come across as a party preoccupied with ballrooms, Argentina bailouts, and private jets. Republicans' breach of trust with the American people is deep and perhaps irreversible. And now that they have failed to do anything to prevent premiums from going up, the anger that Americans feel against Donald Trump and the Republicans is going to get worse. Republicans had their chance to fix this, and they blew it. Americans will remember Republican intransigence every time they make a sky-high payment on health insurance. Yield the floor. Note the absence of a quorum.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very thankful to see you all this morning. I'm thankful to welcome you to what appears to be the beginning of the end of the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, as shameful as that is. I don't think it's coincidental. You know how I think, but it's after 40 days of wandering in the wilderness and making the American people suffer needlessly, some Senate Democrats finally have stepped forward to end the pain. It appears to us this morning that our long national nightmare is finally coming to an end, and we're grateful for that. At least some Democrats now finally appear ready to do what Republicans and President Trump and millions of hardworking American people have been asking them to do for weeks. But as we said from the beginning, the people's government cannot be held hostage to further anyone's political agenda. That was never right. And shutting down the government never produces anything. It never has, if you study history. And so here we are. I want to remind everybody this morning of another critical point that you've heard me here repeat over and over the last several weeks. It's something that I and Leader John Thune and President Trump and every Republican leader have all said repeatedly from the beginning. We have always been open to finding solutions to reduce the oppressive costs of health care under the Unaffordable Care Act. We just made clear that we would not and should not ever do that, that is, negotiate as hostages. And I've also reminded you here every morning at this press conference throughout the shutdown, Republicans have not just been talking about reducing costs and fraud and abuse in so many areas and in health care. We've been actually passing new laws to accomplish that urgent mission for the people, and we will continue to do so. So here's where we are by way of schedule, just so you know, you're following. And if you're not at home, if you're waking up to this good news this morning, the Senate's vote late last night of 60 to 40 opens the door now. The Senate is moving forward on an amended House CR, a continuing resolution, that will reopen the government until January 30th. Added to that are provisions to fully fund SNAP provisions through the end of the next fiscal year, which is September 2026. Guaranteed back pay for all federal workers who have been made to endure these hardships over the last several weeks. And it also includes passage of 3 appropriations bills, which we're grateful to be moving through the process. That is the Military Construction Veterans Affairs bill, it's the Agriculture bill, and the Legislative Branch bill. The Senate will be back in session this morning to finish their job, and we're certainly praying that they do. They'll need unanimous consent from all senators to fast-track their final vote. As you know, there are some procedural hurdles that one or more could throw in the way, but we certainly hope that they won't do that because so many people across this country are desperate for the government to reopen. At the very moment that they do that final vote, I will call all House members to return to Washington as quickly as possible. We'll give a 36-hour formal and official notice so that we can vote as soon as possible to pass the amended CR bill and get it to the President's desk. As you all know, and he said as recently as last night, I was with him, and he told the press, he said, we want to get the government open. He's very anxious to get the government reopened and to end the Schumer shutdown. We all are. With regard to the travel challenges, I spoke yesterday at some length with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, my former colleague and good friend, and he lamented the serious situation that we have with air travel in the U.S. He's bent over backwards, as all members of the administration and the cabinet have done in all of their areas of jurisdiction, to try to keep the government working for the people and to mitigate the pain and the harm. But the problem we have with air travel is that our air traffic controllers are overworked and unpaid, and many of them have called in sick. That's a very stressful job, and even more stressful exponentially when they're having trouble providing for their families. And so air travel has been grinding to a halt in many places. And as of Sunday, nearly half of all domestic flights and U.S. flights were either canceled or delayed. And it's a very serious situation. So I'm saying that by way of reminder. I'm stating the obvious to all my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats in the House. You need to begin right now returning to the Hill. We have to do this as quickly as possible. Now, we look forward to the government reopening this week so Congress can get back to our regular legislative session. We have a lot of business to do, as you all know, and we will be working in earnest. There'll be long days and long nights here for the foreseeable future to make up for all this lost time that was imposed upon us. I want to close with something that's important. I think it's important to say that this is genuine. I mean this sincerely. We applaud the 7 Senate Democrats and 1 independent senator who did the right thing. They decided to put principle over their personal politics. And my urgent plea of all my colleagues in the House, and that means every Democrat in the House, is to think carefully, pray, and finally do the right thing and help us to bring an end to the pain of the American people. This has gone on too long. Too many people have suffered, and it's long overdue. That's the update I wanted to give you this morning. There are probably lots of questions, but I'm going to get a lot of my own questions answered later today, so stay tuned for more. Thanks so much.
From the very beginning of this year, Donald Trump and Republicans have failed to deliver on their core promise to lower the high cost of living in the United States of America. In fact, what Donald Trump and Republicans said is that costs were going to go down on day one. But costs haven't gone down. They're going up. Inflation is going up. Under Republican policies, housing costs are going up. Child care costs are going up. Grocery costs are going up. Electricity prices are through the roof. And now, because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans are about to experience dramatically increased health care costs. In some cases, their health insurance premiums will increase by $1,000 or $2,000 per year. That is unacceptable. It will be unaffordable for working class Americans, middle class Americans, and everyday Americans to be able to go see a doctor when they need one. And so House Democrats and Senate Democrats have been fighting hard to address the Republican health care crisis and to lower the high cost of living for everyday Americans in the United States of America. Because the reality is, America is too expensive. And far too many people are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. They can't thrive. They can barely survive. And that's why Democrats have been waging this fight. And will continue to wage this fight. No matter what comes over to us from the United States Senate to the House of Representatives at some point this week. Our position as House Democrats has been crystal clear. We will sit down with any Republicans, anytime, any place, anywhere, in order to find a bipartisan path forward. But we're not down with their my way or the highway approach to governance. That's failed the American people. It's been a disaster for the American people, and the American people know it, which is why last Tuesday, Republicans all across the country got wiped out. One of the most decisive off-year elections ever in modern American history. And so as House Democrats, we know we're on the right side of this fight, the right side of the American people. And we're not going to support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. And we're going to continue the fight to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And if it doesn't happen this week, next week, this month, next month, then it's the fault of Donald Trump, House and Senate Republicans, who continue to make life more expensive for the American people.
We begin on Capitol Hill in a live look at the Senate floor where lawmakers work to end the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history. There they are. So the deal on the table would extend funding of the government through the end of January. It doesn't get us into spring, just to the end of January. But think about this. It took 8 mostly moderate Senate Democrats to break ranks and break through to the bill. Now, in exchange, the promise of a future vote to extend those health care subsidies that they've been digging in their heels over, also reversing layoffs of federal workers made during the shutdown, and then long-term funding for federal food assistance known as SNAP. House Speaker Mike Johnson talked about what comes next for the House.
At the very moment that they do that final vote, I will call all House members to return to Washington as quickly as possible. We'll give a 36-hour formal and official notice so that we can vote as soon as possible to pass the amended CR bill and get it to the president's desk.
So House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries responded at a news conference just a short time ago. He said most Democrats don't want to compromise on the issues that have kept the two sides apart for the past 7 weeks.
The overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats, led by Leader Schumer, are opposing this bill in the Senate. And they'll articulate, there are a variety of different reasons that the bill is being opposed strongly by Democrats in the Senate, the overwhelming majority of them. And there'll be a variety of different reasons that we articulate in the House.
So let's go now to Capitol Hill and CBS News political reporter Hunter Woodall. Hunter, what are you hearing from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle on the chances that this time could be the time the bill passes to get the government up and running?
Well, Reed, as you've seen so far, there are many Democrats, including you saw their House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, who are clearly upset and not happy with the compromise that was reached between Republicans and that handful of Senate Democrats that you mentioned. Now, the key question is going to be, is there enough support to get it through the Senate? It appears so. But what will the U.S. House do when it gets its hands on the bill? Obviously, Speaker Mike Johnson doesn't have to deal with any kind of filibuster threshold. He doesn't even technically need the House vote to be bipartisan. So what we'll be watching to see will be, will House Republicans have to carry this vote on their own when it gets to that chamber if it does indeed pass the House? Or will there be a question of, are there moderate Democrats in the House who will end up backing this measure? Obviously, we've seen so far a handful of Senate Democrats who are supporting this, who helped Senate Republicans overcome this key hurdle last night. The question remains to be seen whether or not they're going to continue to feel the kind of pushback they are, because the Democratic base is clearly unhappy with this deal, and they're venting their frustration so far.
Right, and they're unhappy over health care. In fact, I heard from one of the Nevada senators this morning on national radio say they're not sure if they trust that a vote on health care will, as promised, actually happens. But if that shutdown ends, what is, in those crucial December, January weeks, the path forward for both parties specific to health care?
That is the thing. I mean, when you look at why this shutdown happened, Reed, Democrats kept saying it's because of health care. It's because they're concerned about health care costs, these expiring tax credits under the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. But when you look at the compromise that's been reached, there's really nothing solid to say that there will be action to move forward to address that issue. There's talk of a vote. There's obviously the talk that this will be taken up in the Senate. That's no guarantee, though, that the GOP-held House or even President Trump are in agreement that this issue needs to be addressed before the end of the year, before these tax credits and the issues that they bring with them have to be addressed. That's that key contention, and that's why you're seeing the Democratic base very unhappy so far. And so far here on Capitol Hill, we're not seeing much to be done to address those concerns.
All right, Hunter Woodall on Capitol Hill, thank you so much. So as the U.S. government shutdown continues, so do cancellations and delays at airports all across the country. The Federal Aviation Administration says a shortage of air traffic controllers forced them to cut thousands of flights last week, 10% cut by week's end. So take a look at this. We like to show this to you because these are the pain points on the map where you're traveling. It's called the FlightAware Misery Map. So you travelers out of Chicago, New York, and Boston feeling the lion's share of the impacts right now. But nowhere is it comfortable. Earlier today, the president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association had this to say.
Air traffic controllers and other aviation safety professionals we represent have now received 2 $0 paychecks, 41 days without pay. Controllers continue to show up and step up. Despite working full-time during the shutdown and in many cases mandatory overtime, controllers continue to show up and step up for the American flying public and for each other.
Well, on social media, this happened. President Donald Trump weighed in on the absence of some air traffic controllers. He says all air traffic controllers must get back to work now. Anyone who doesn't will be substantially docked. He went on to say in full shortly into the future, I am not happy with you. Just moments ago, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy echoed the president's comments. He posted on X saying, quote, air traffic controllers need to show up for work. To those who have worked throughout the shutdown, thank you for your patriotism and commitment to keeping our skies safe. He went on to say he will work with Congress to reward their commitment. So a lot to break down here. Let's go live to CBS News national correspondent Meg Oliver. You join us from Newark International in New Jersey. So what's the flying public telling you on a Monday there, Meg?
Reed, good to be with you. They are telling me that they are not happy. Everyone that I have talked to today was supposed to fly out yesterday. Newark is one of the hardest hit airports with significant delays and cancellations, along with Atlanta, Boston, and Phoenix. I met Anne Marie Hopkins a short time ago. She's trying to get to Rome for her 50th birthday. She spent 13 hours at the airport in St. Louis yesterday before finally arriving here at Newark at midnight. Here's what she had to say when I asked her how she was feeling.
I'm very tired, exhausted, and so we're here early. Our flight's supposed to leave about 5 today. We're hoping it works.
I mean, can you kind of paint a picture of what that was like yesterday?
Mass chaos. It was just mass chaos. Sitting in chairs for like 13 hours, tired, no food, just feeling a little bit lost. Our baggage is here. But luckily that we prepped just in case, so we had enough stuff, toiletries and stuff in our carry-on, but our check bags are somewhere here in Newark. We don't know.
And so what is your message? You know, what do you want the government to know?
That this is affecting all of us. I mean, everybody got affected, and there was a lot of elderly that were affected, that were lost. Some people didn't have the funds for these hotels. We will have travel insurance. We'll get it back. I'm fortunate enough to have that, but there was so many people. One lady didn't know where to go. She didn't have the money.
People are stressed, they're tired, they're exhausted. This has been a long weekend if you were traveling. She arrived at Newark today 5 hours before her scheduled flight to Rome. As of right now, it is scheduled to take off on time. We shall see. But this problem is going to continue until the government resolves this shutdown. As you mentioned earlier, Reed, they're going to continue to cut flights up to 10% by this Friday.
Wow. Okay, and really, you know, she punctuates something that's so important. I never get travel insurance. I should. Everybody else probably should as well. What are some other tips that we're hearing that could help travelers out there who may be, just like her, stuck in an airport for hours?
Hours. I mean, 13 hours. Can you imagine? That happened to my mom yesterday, too. She was trying to fly home from Santa Barbara to Raleigh. She only made it to Denver. She just got out about an hour ago. She didn't get flight insurance either, but I do know that she was able to rebook her flight without any change fees. It's the best advice is to make sure you have contingency plans, or maybe look at driving with the upcoming holiday weekend, taking the train, taking alternate routes of travel, because at this point it's just not reliable to be getting on a flight. You just don't know. Things are changing by the minute.
Wow. Well, thank you for keeping us updated, even though it's not great news on a Monday. Meg Oliver, thank you so much. Newark Airport, we salute those who are there working so hard for the traveling public.